So, when I had to choose a college major, I chose a bachelor's degree in computer science, hoping it would be an outlet for both my love for math, science, problem solving, but also for design, user experience, and art in general. So, I got my degree in computer science. My first job out of college was as a software engineer. And it was unique because I also was the team scrum master, which is a very demanding leadership role, it turned out. Um, Say hello to Peach. Um, I actually was receiving a lot of praise in that role. I was getting promoted up the management path. And it was at that point that I forced myself to pause and reconsider where I was heading. I realized that my technical skills weren't being developed as quickly as my management skills. And I was hesitant climbing into an engineering management role without first doing the role as an engineer. So, despite 2 years of experience, which felt like an eternity, and that title, senior software engineer, I ended up leaving that role and coming to Vista as an entry level engineer. And so I ultimately relaunched my technical career at that point, um, which did mean I was accepting a demotion, which was scary and intimidating and embarrassing, honestly. But I knew it was the right thing to do. It would set me up to be a better engineer and then a better manager in the long run. So I was happy to take that risk. So since starting at Vista, my career journey has continued to be nonlinear, I'd say. Um, I started the first few years on a full stack team. So I was working in the front end of a web development team and also in the back end. So everything from JavaScript and HTML back to Java, AWS, that type of stuff. Um, I was getting very comfortable. I felt like I could contribute strongly. And it was at that point that I actually switched to a front end development team because I wanted to specialize closer to the front end. And in doing that, I realized I was missing some fundamentals of that front end space that hadn't been so relevant to me before because I was kind of scratching the surface and had now become pivotal to my role with that change. So I felt, again, pretty embarrassed. I had to sit down and do with a notebook and sticky notes and highlighters and do tutorials called How Websites Work, Intro to Web Development, things that I should feel like I should be doing as a senior software engineer. Um, but I had to give myself grace, remind myself this is stuff I haven't had to know. If I needed to know it, I would have known it by now. Now I need to know it. I'll take the time to learn it. I'm capable of learning it. I've proved it to myself before, and I can do it again now. Um, so I did that, swallowed my pride, did all my homework, and it paid off. I was able to ramp up faster than I really thought I could, and was contributing really soon. So all in all, I'm so glad I made that switch and that I continue to make that switch when I see it fitting. And within a year of being at Vista, after taking that demotion, I actually got back to my senior engineer role. And actually, just 2 weeks ago, I was promoted to lead engineer. So it's been quite the nonlinear journey, but I'm grateful for every twist and turn. And my role at Vista is lead software engineer, specializing in front end web development. So the software I work on is called the design system, which means I write JavaScript, HTML, CSS code that is used internally by other teams who work on our website to make all of our pages look and feel the same and cohesive. So, for example, if you loaded a website without any styles on it, so without that CSS and that JavaScript, you would see that default rectangular gray button with black letters that is not necessarily enticing. And so my team writes the code to make that button bigger with rounded corners, a blue background, a nice white text, stuff like that. So a typical day involves maintaining that code itself, which means I'm writing the code or I'm reviewing code that my teammates are writing, as well as the infrastructure that we use to make it available to other teams. So everything we use for deploying the code, hosting it, testing it, all that good stuff. A typical day could also involve writing documentation so that our consumers know how to use that code, and then fielding questions from them, which we use Slack for that. They'll ask questions about usages, maybe bugs that they find or features that they're hoping to see, so that we can keep improving our product. So very open line of communication with our consumers, which is a really unique part of being on what we call a platform team. On one of my old teams, my consumer was our customer. The page I was working on was consumed by our customer. Whereas on this team, the code I write is consumed by other people in my company. So I get a really cool feedback loop with other engineers. It's a really nice way to get to know other people across the company and build a network that way. And on a higher level, when we see opportunity for a new feature or a process that will benefit our consumers or even our own team with delivering our product. This is where I come in as the lead engineer. I help to divide that work, consult on technical decisions that we need to make it efficient and maintainable and all that good stuff. When I was relaunching my career, my technical career at Vista, I struggled a lot with confidence. First of all, being a woman in tech, it brings bias and microaggressions that kind of validated the insecurity that I was already feeling. My new role that I had taken also required that I use technology I wasn't familiar with. So I was very self-conscious of the learning curve that came with that as I was onboarding. Um, it was pretty unique too that the way I came into Vista, I was referred by a colleague that I'd met in college, and we graduated at the same time, and we're working on the same team, but he was 2 levels above me at that point because I had taken that demotion. So I came in alongside somebody who, although we launched our careers at the same time, his path went a very different way, and I felt very insecure next to him. I was comparing myself to his journey, which was discouraging at times. And in general, I felt very weighed down by this overwhelming sense of fear that I just wasn't cut out for this. I was like, the universe tried sending me down the management path, probably for a reason. I should have just listened. I am not capable of being an engineer. What am I thinking? What am I doing? I can't do this. But I was very lucky in that I had a wonderful manager that I could trust. I felt that I could talk to him about this kind of self-doubt that I was feeling. So I talked to him and he immediately said, this is pretty common what you're feeling. There's actually a word for it and it's called imposter syndrome. And I was like, no. And thank goodness he said something because then I looked it up. I learned that it's this phenomenon where high achieving people feel this extreme case of self-doubt, which convinces them that they've achieved everything in their life without any merit. It's all just been like luck or, right place, right time, something like that, despite very tangible evidence that that's not the case. I have the degree, I've gotten the job interviews and gotten the jobs, and for some reason still convinced myself that I'm not capable of doing the job. And you live in this constant fear that someone's going to find out and realize that you're an imposter or a fraud, and you're going to lose everything you've worked for and have to start over. This is very much what I was feeling. And him acknowledging that and being able to point to it and give a name to it, and then tell me, here are some resources that can tell you how to work through this, and other people who are feeling this, was a turning point. I felt so validated. I felt like I wasn't crazy and that maybe there is something bigger here. It's that this is actually just doubt and not reality. So I started talking to other women about it because I learned it was very common among women, and it turned out they were all feeling something similar. Even women up in higher leadership positions are like, oh yeah, I still feel this all the time. So that really helped. And then I just worked closely with my manager. We figured out like, what are the ways that we can work through this together? And one was, for example, people with imposter syndrome sometimes need a lot of validation, just reminders that what they're doing is valuable and that they are contributing and that like the work they're doing is useful, and they're doing a good job. And so he kind of worked that into his management style where he would always make sure that when we had our one-on-ones or talked asynchronously, that he was acknowledging the work that I was doing well so that I could look back on those things when I was feeling discouraged and remember that I made tangible value. So with this, I'd like to leave a piece of advice, and that is, if any of this resonates with you, you suspect that you have these same feelings and they're holding you back in your career, find someone you can trust and talk about it. It doesn't necessarily have to be a manager. It could be anyone else. They might just know exactly how to help. A person to talk to, a resource. With that said, like if you currently report to someone you feel like you can't have that conversation with, it could be that you're just not compatible, and that's okay. So when you're considering a role, consider who you're going to report to. Don't be afraid to ask questions about, here's something that I struggle with called imposter syndrome. How would you manage that? How would you help me? How would you accommodate that so that I'm doing my best to help the team and the product and the business goal, and you can help me to do that. You're only making their job easier by being transparent. It's making your job easier. Everyone wins that way. So don't be shy. Since joining Vista, I've been very mindful about seeking opportunities that will serve my goal to become a strong, reliable engineer, but also nurturing my leadership skills. Because I had the job before that very much helped with my leadership skills. I came here very much with the goal of building those technical skills, but I would love that happy medium where I can work on both without sacrificing one or the other. So what I've done to strengthen my technical skills is work on different teams that present different problems, technologies, end users, um, working models across the team, like different distributions of talent, leveling, to help broaden my own expertise. With that, I've also looked outside my team. I participate in guilds. So one of them being the front end guild. And this is just a group of like-minded people at the company who are working on the same type of stuff, and they can share their own insights. Like, hey, I tried this testing framework and it sucks, don't use it. Or I used this testing framework, I found it to be very helpful, try using this one. I can go there with a question and say, I don't really understand how this works. Can someone explain it to me like I'm 5? It's really helped to build connection. I now have a bigger network because I'm reaching outside of my team. That helps with visibility. And it also helps, of course, the technical skills that I'm getting out of that. And then to help with my leadership skills outside of those two things is also I help to co-lead one of those guilds. So we have almost a guild inside of a guild. It's called the Accessibility Guild. And it's a group inside the front end guild of people who are knowledgeable or just interested in how we make our website accessible for everybody. So that's no matter what kind of, if you may have a disability where you have trouble seeing, or you can't use a mouse, or you need to use a screen reader to use our site, making sure that everybody who wants to place an order on our site can do it with ease, despite their situation. So I help to lead that group, which means that I help to identify the gaps in knowledge among the people in that group and help find resources and trainings to fill those gaps. So sometimes that means that I'm recording myself doing a demo of how I check my page to be accessible. Here's how you use a screen reader. Here's how you navigate with a keyboard without a mouse for somebody who can't use a mouse, stuff like that. That's really helped with leadership because I am not only taking accountability, I guess, or responsibility for making sure that these people are all informed and educated and feel equipped to be able to do this job. But again, it's also broadening my network and helping me to meet more people. I also volunteer for what we call employee resource groups. So these are groups of employees who find a need in the company. So for the group that I lead, it's called Women at Work because it actually began as Women in Tech because women are a minority in the technical fields. And it just served as a group to offer a sense of community and belonging. And we would give resources. Like I did a presentation on imposter syndrome a couple of years back, things that they could relate to and things that could help them through their career. So I helped to organize and facilitate events for that group. And that, of course, has helped with my leadership skills as well and communication skills. Just having to facilitate a company-wide event is really going to force you to learn how to public speak and how to communicate clearly, advertise, all that good stuff. Most importantly, though, I think one of the most important things that I've done when I joined Vista was seeking out mentorship because I realized that was something that was missing in my last role. So here at Vista, I've come across a lot of brilliant minds. And when I do, I reach out and ask, hey, do you have bandwidth to talk about this thing? Like, I noticed that you are very good at public speaking. Do you mind if I pick your brain about it? And just set up like a 30-minute call. And sometimes those 30-minute calls turn into a recurring meeting. So I have 2 mentors that I meet with regularly. One of them was actually the VP of engineering when I first reached out to her, which was a very intimidating message to send. But you have nothing to lose. The worst thing they can say is, I'm so sorry, I don't have the bandwidth, or I can only give you like a half hour every 4 months, but that will be such a valuable half hour. And so I encourage you to don't be shy, reach out. And when you come across someone in your network or that you work with and you see something about them that inspires you or that you admire, whether it's a skill or even just their demeanor, tell them that. Because you also don't know who else out there has imposter syndrome and needs to hear those validating things too, so I just think it's so harmless and can really help everybody. I have three things that I really want to get across from my story and what I've lived through and what I continue to work through as an engineer. And that is, 1, your career is a journey, not a path. It does not need to be linear. So don't be afraid, take a step back, pivot, try new things, try hard things. You are capable of doing them no matter what your annoying, nagging brain might be telling you. Um, with that said, if you do have that nagging brain that's making you feel doubtful, be transparent about it and seek help. There's no shame in that. The answer might be you have imposter syndrome. Here are some tips to help you navigate that. Or it could be you're just missing this fundamental. Go take this tutorial and you'll be all caught up. The answer is often simple. You just need to swallow your pride, be brave, and seek out that answer. Um, the last thing is to take advantage of your network. Um, it is so likely that whatever you're working through has been lived through by that person. And they can offer you a paved path to get through it also. So it also, when you come to somebody with whatever you're struggling with and you're vocal about it, it helps you to, I think, confront it. It gives it less power. Um, Rather than hiding away from it, feeling ashamed, feel like it's something you have to hide or get through on your own. That's just never the case in my experience. It's always better to try to work through it with somebody that you trust that has lived through it also.